Welcome to part 6 of our remote worker series. Mike Doloff, Chief Revenue Officer at Inflow Communications. I have with me Travis Diller. Travis, say hi.
Hello, everybody. Great to be here.
Thanks, Travis. I am super excited. We're going to conclude this series today. Part 6, we've covered our journey in becoming a remote company, really the happenstance that happened around that. It's pretty interesting, and where we're at today with it. We've talked about the role of collaboration and technology in remote workers in a remote company. We talked about recruiting and retention, and we talked about measuring and reporting and the evolution of that. So there's a big topic I think missing in here that we're going to tackle today. Obviously, one of the big, I think it becomes almost cliche topics now is culture in an organization, right? But it definitely has something, and it has some near and dear meanings to me. I'm excited to talk about this today. How does culture and the role culture plays in having a remote workforce or a completely remote company? So starting off with this, I'd love for you to define for you, what is culture? I think it feels nebulous at times. Define culture for you for Inflow.
Sure. Well, and it's just before I dive into that, it's interesting that you talk about culture, because when I tell people that we are a 100% virtual company, people are, that's the first thing they wonder. How don't people feel like they're on islands? Or you talk to people that might have a corporate headquarters with remote workers, and the remote workers are generally felt like they're on an island and they're not really plugged into the company. So it's definitely a question that comes up and very pertinent to a virtual company. So for us, culture, everything ties back to our core values. We're a big core principles company, and we have a business coach, as you know, Mike, Keith Upkeesey meets with us quarterly, and he has a lot of customers that are brick and mortar, and he says we have one of the strongest cultures, and I'm very proud of that, because it's something that you have to water, feed, and grow all the time. It's not something that just happens to your company. So going back to what I was talking about, it's our core principles. And core principles are, for us, it's made up of our X factor, our core values, and our core purpose. Why do we exist? And everything happens in our company based on our core principles. So at the leadership level, when we're deciding if we want to take on a customer or a new line of business, we ask if it aligns with our core values, and all the way down to our employees. How do you make decisions, and how do you function day to day? Is it aligned with our core principles? And so it's absolutely imperative, and it's very cliche, because everybody's, they puke out core values, put it on their website, and that's about as far as it goes. And so what we did about half a decade ago is we put pen to paper, and we created what we felt embodied Inflow. So we were always kind of living our core values before we really had them on paper, and this just helped us get clarification of what they are. And just to give people an example of what those are, and I'm sure you can go to our website and check those out. The main reason we exist is to enhance the lives of our employees and our customers. You don't get one without the other, and so that's really critical to us. And then as you expand beyond that, and I'm looking at my mouse pad here, because everybody has a mouse pad with our core values on it. We have go above and beyond and go further, think big, dream it, do it, work hard, play hard, let integrity, accountability, and appreciation lead us to greatness. And my favorite is creating unforgettable experiences for our customers at every interaction. So we're constantly trying to figure out how do we provide these incredible experiences for our customers. And so, like I said, everything comes down to those core principles and core values. And then our X factor, by the way, is operate with a sense of urgency. So this is if you go ask any one of our employees, they should know what these are, and they behave that way every single day. And so once you have your core values, then that's how you function as an employee, as someone on the leadership team, and as a company. So hopefully that describes really the foundation, the core tenets of our culture.
No, that's cool. I think so. For you, kind of, it's the DNA, right? It's helped formalize the DNA of the company, right? Where maybe it started organically with Inflow, as these were the things we were operating, sort of the similar attributes we were operating under when the company was a handful of people.
Sure.
Which works maybe when it's a couple of people, right? But then as you grow, how do you formalize that, and how does that culture become something that doesn't get lost? One question I didn't have scripted, but I want to ask you is, does the culture evolve over time with a company? Have you seen that evolution over time? Is it a living and breathing organism kind of thing?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's not static by any means. It does evolve. And I would say our culture has actually improved over the years because, people at Inflow, they have a chip on their shoulder. They're proud to be here. They're proud what we're doing in the industry and with the marketplace and how well we take care of our customers. And so whereas someone might be new to culture when they come on board, after a couple of years after they've been with us, I mean, it's really ingrained. And you mentioned DNA, and I love using that analogy. Oftentimes, we're always constantly trying to innovate what we're doing, our support packages or our managed service offerings or what we're providing our customers, and we have success with it. And our competition comes along and tries to do the same thing. And I always tell our employees, that's great. You can mimic what we're doing on a website, but do they have our DNA? Is it something that guides how you interact with each other and with customers every second, every minute, every hour, every day of the month, every month of the year? That's a lot of interactions with customers. And if you have strong core values that drive those, you can't copy that. And so I like that you use DNA.
Yeah, it made me think. It'd be an interesting. We obviously operate in the customer experience space, and so we're always looking at thinking about interactions with companies and how organizations interact with one another, with their consumers. And there's obviously a very strong link, I think, between how those interactions to customers are with the culture of the company, I think, at times, right? And so,
absolutely. You work with a company that has, unhappy employees and a toxic culture. You look no further than the top because that's where it comes from.
Right. Yeah, pretty interesting. So it definitely ties to what we do as a company and the type of work we do with clients, the culture element. That's great. So, the next question for you, of course, this is the remote worker series. So how has culture, evolved? How do you affect it? I guess not evolved, but how do you affect it when everyone's remote? So maybe you can speak to that. I'd love to hear how culture had been handled at Inflow, right, with everyone right across.
Well, obviously, this can be something we could literally have a 2-day workshop on, and then we want to keep this fairly succinct. So I'll try and spare people my lecture, which I tend to do, as you point out to me often. First of all, repetition, right? These are our core values. No one can escape our core principles. Not me, not any people on the leadership team, nobody. So repetition. It's on our mouse pad. We repeat it on our company calls. It's on our website. It's in our newsletter. It's alive and well, our core values, and we have to make that really, really important. You have to live it too. You can't say these are your core values and then make decisions that are against those. So repetition, live it. I would say there is no substitute for seeing somebody face to face. You and I are we're getting together this week. We're going to meet for probably 4 or 5 hours doing a strategy session, working on marketing and sales plans. That's great. We could do it over video, but there's no substitute and so sometimes we got to travel. We do what's called market visits. We've had company retreats. We get people together. And so I strongly believe you still have to do that. Mm-hmm. Technology is huge. The technology stack there's no way we would be where we're at with the culture that we have without technology. Video is absolutely critical. We use tens of thousands of minutes of video. And then I would say some of the other collaboration apps that we use are equally as important as video. Is like Slack. We use Glip now with RingCentral, but that's absolutely critical. And that we've talked about that when it comes to technology. Without those types of messaging applications that are very organic, we wouldn't have the culture that we have. We also have, and I mentioned this in the beginning of this, culture doesn't happen to you. You've got to be very proactive about it. You have to be, you can't just, I'm going to age myself here. You can't throw a ping pong table and a beer keg in the break room and, have really sexy decorations in your office and say you have great culture, right? You've got to feed and water it all the time. We have a culture committee. And there's people on that culture committee that are dedicated to keeping their finger on the pulse of culture and actually driving that. I'm surprised we just did this, but we've just implemented our first employee survey, which is, our HR staff member initiated a survey. The leadership team, we're gonna hear back on that this week. How for our employees, how are they doing? Do they feel like they have meaningful jobs? Do they enjoy working? Do they feel plugged in? So again, you got to be proactive about it. because it's an iterative process. It's like you said, have we arrived and now we've got great culture? No, you've constantly got to be evaluating and implementing and pushing that forward. So I think that's really important. The people's huge, right? I can't stress that enough. In fact, that should probably be number one. I mean, because culture is a people thing, right? You can't have a great culture with a wrong fit. You can have, so whenever we're hiring, yes, we're looking for technical aptitude. We're looking for, the ability to learn, looking for the ability to work remotely. That's important, but even more important than that is, are they a good culture fit, right? Because if you bring in someone that's not a good culture fit, they're a bull in a china shop. We've seen that. We've had mishires here at Inflow. And so it comes down to hiring the right people that align well with your culture. I think that's it. Again, go back to live it, live your culture from the top down. So
yeah, it's cool. I think the interesting, just to comment on one of them, the interesting part is because you don't have the sort of hallway conversations or water cooler conversations, or can't pop in and say something, you have to be purposeful on how, like, for example, I think a core part of the culture of Inflow is appreciation, right? It's part of our core values, but I think there's a constant sort of feeling of making sure people feel appreciated across departments, across the company. And when you're remote, you have to share that somewhere. That has to be a phone call. That has to be an email, a message, right? Like you can't, you're not going to just sort of, you have to be purpose. It has to be communicated in some way. And I think that forces you to sort of think of some of these things differently, right? You're going to type something out or say something that's going to be a part of that. It's not just like a wave to them as they walk in and you're walking through the hall kind of thing, right? So
yeah, and we
acknowledgement.
We have probably a way to sum that up is celebrate it. We celebrate it at Inflow. We have our core value hero every month. We're now moving that to quarterly, and that's a big thing. Every month when people submit nominations all month long, and they're nominating their peers on who's living out our core values, and that's become a big part of our culture. Like it's an acronym, CVH. Like everybody knows what that means. It's a core value hero, and so subsequent to that, right? We also celebrate our customers, right? I know we consider our customers as our partners, and so one of the things I know we're working on is doing something similar for our customers that embody a partnership for us. And so you should celebrate the things that you want to drive in the business. So that's a good point.
Yeah, that's cool. I think something else too is that you kind of we touched on with the evolution, but the reality is culture in an organization is always changing, right? Or is always evolving. And so, don't be afraid to try new things, right? Like we came up with different things over time that some of them have stuck and have grown, and other ones have, we tried them and they didn't work to enhance things. But it's not the static thing, right? You can't take this moment in time of, hey, I love exactly everything where it's at our company. It's perfect. We just want to keep doing this exactly the same. It doesn't work that way, right? Things are going to evolve. People will change. Market changes. Yeah, I mean, everything changes. So you have to constantly think of ways to evolve it. But yeah, and I think you're right. There's ways we've sort of, we celebrate, great customer stories and great customer feedback in ways. Communicate that through. There's these things have become a part of the DNA and things we expect to see and people participate in, which is cool.
The win bell. We have a win bell on our Glip channel. Hey, customer got a feedback on this. Yeah, it's great. Everybody celebrates.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Cool. Well, so we'll wrap this series up because I think this has been super fun, kind of picking your brain on it. But I want to close with just something really succinct for everybody to walk away with. And what I'd like to hear from you, Travis, is list the main pro of having remote workers or just having a remote workforce, and then the main con of that. So people, and maybe flip it. Give us the con first, so we end on the high note. Give us the con first, and then give us the pro. All right.
I would say probably the biggest challenge of having a 100% virtual company, and you mentioned it, is just kind of that organic collaboration. There's no substitute for pulling 5 bright minds into a room, closing the door, popping up a whiteboard, and brainstorming on an issue. You can do it at Inflow. You can do it with a 100% virtual company, but it definitely has to be a lot more structured. And you'll lose some of that spontaneity, right? Hey, at 2 o'clock, let's be spontaneous.
Let's got this idea right now that I got to hold for 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And so you do miss that. And and even the people that love our remote work culture, That's one thing that I hear people say, hey, I do miss that. I miss being able to pop in and have those conversations, and you got to be more mindful about that. So, and I guess the pro, would you like me to?
Yes, please.
Okay. I would think, and this is all encompassing, and I could talk about this and give examples for an hour, but I think it's allowed us to be a lot more nimble, which is important. We started out as a few employees, and now we have 55 employees, and I know that's still small. To me, it seems large since we started out with just a handful. But I would say that it's the flexibility. We've been able to pivot when we need to. If there's market changes, if we want to go into new lines of businesses, we can service customers anywhere in the country because of the very nature of how we're built, and that's been great. We don't care if you're in New York or if you're in Omaha, right? It doesn't matter. We can service you just the same. And it ties into the people, right? It has forced us to manage by objectives, by KPIs, and hire really, really incredible entrepreneurial people. And I can guarantee you, if we were a brick and mortar shop, we wouldn't have the staff that we have now. First of all, you'd just be limited to a geography they got to hire. But second of all, players that are entrepreneurial and the right type of person for our company, they want to work for us because they like not commuting 2 hours a day. They like that. And so we've been able to secure what I would consider just the best talent in the country, which allows us to be entrepreneurial and free-spirited and nimble, and allow us to pivot and do some really great things as a company. So I'd say the biggest pro is flexibility.
Awesome. Travis, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing insights about remote workers. We'll come up with something. I don't have the next one off the top of my head ready right now, but I think we'll come up with something fun to chat with you on again soon. So thanks so much. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Talk to you soon.
Thanks. Bye.